All right, everybody, yeah. As you know, we got a special guest here tonight speaking, T-Bone Guide Service, Chris and Andy. Many of you know them. We're going to be talking some ice fishing and maybe a little bit of muskie. I don't know. But
why not? We'll throw it in there, right?
Q&A, right?
Right,
So
exactly.
we'll have some fun. Thanks for being here, guys.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thank you guys for coming out. What a motley looking crew, most of you. Most of you I know we've had in the boat, right? Most of us have already fished together, so we're all friends here. Some of you guys, most of you guys probably know Andy, who is my partner. Not just my life partner, but my partner in business, right? Andy's been with us now, what, 4 years, 5 years? How long? I don't even know.
I think this will be my third one full
It
time.
seems like forever.
And I think it's been like 4 or 5 part-time.
Yeah. So Andy's, for the people that don't know, he is a retired veteran from the Afghani and Iraqi war, and he came out of the war, and he was actually one of my clients to start off with, and he came out probably like 3 times in 2 weeks. I'm like, what's with this guy, man? What's his deal? And we just got to talking more and more and became friends. He's a fantastic fisherman. He's been a huge asset to the business and really helped out T-Bone as a whole. So
Thank you.
Andy knows as much about these lakes as I do, and he's been doing very well up on Lake Geneva. The given nights that Lake Geneva wants to cooperate, Lake Geneva is Lake Geneva. But it's myself, Andy, and then we have 2 other partners too, Lincoln and Matt, who aren't here tonight, but they also help out with the ice fishing thing as well too. So a lot of times we'll take out big groups of people for the ice fishing. I mean, we do everything from 2 people all the way up to 20 people. We've had out bachelor parties, we had birthday parties, we've had
Get out the quads and snowmobiles and
the Cub Scouts and all that other good stuff. So we can fit as many as you guys want to bring, right? That's kind of what it is for us.
Give us like a 3-day heads up if it's a big group, you know?
Yeah, exactly. We'll even order food because, well, we're both Italian and we like to eat a lot, so we'll definitely get food while we're on the ice. But past that, and if we ever get ice, I'm not even sure. I actually got a text today, guy going, I want to book an ice trip. Have you been outside? Or?
I've had a few of my ice trips already, out in the boat the last couple weeks. So.
Yeah, I don't see a lot of ice projected for this season, but
no, not until February.
Maybe, right? God knows we have a lot of time out there and a lot of information to share with you guys. So hopefully some of the stuff that we've learned along the way, and God, I know we have some really good ice fishermen in the room tonight too. Some of the guys that I've talked to. Feel free to speak up because God knows I certainly don't know everything out here. As much as I'm out here and I've dedicated my life to this place, basically, a lot of you guys have done the same thing, growing up out here and finding different bites is stuff. And if there's stuff that you want to share or even correct me on, because God knows I don't know everything, So,
yeah, this is definitely an open conversation.
Yeah.
I was kind of thinking we get started talking about some locations for early ice, obviously starting in channels. A lot of the bays, Turtle Bay is a great example right across the way here. Get into great panfish early ice when it's safe and when we have ice. Cribs being another good option. The DNR cribs obviously get pounded out here, but if you guys don't know, like Willow Point, the one out in front of Kurt's launch here, those are pretty good, can be pretty good through the ice also.
Basically everything that happens from late season open water kind of falls right into the early ice thing. That's the way I see it. A lot of these fish once the water hits under 60, they start migrating towards the channels. That's kind of the number for us out here is 60. If it hits 59, 58, and you're out there and you're looking for panfish, crappies, gills, all that kind of stuff. As soon as it hits like that 59, 60, they start migrating into the channels. And it's the same thing on the other side of the year, right? They're in those channels doing their thing in the spring until it hits about 60, and then they bail out of those. The channels being like any of these channels on the, anything that's got a little bit of depth in it, as long as it's got 2, 3, 4 feet, there's fish in there.
And that's something big too with drawdown going on. Obviously this year being a little bit different. A lot of these channels now that these fish are using, T-channel had 11.5 feet of water in it in November before Thanksgiving, and then it's down at probably like 7.5 right now. So
right.
There's a lot of fluctuation, which kind of tends to change where these fish are showing up year to year.
Absolutely. I mean, it being basically a river system, it does fluctuate a lot, and it does move the fish around. But as a basic note for the temperature, the 60-degree mark is, so right where we leave them at on the open water is where they're at in the first ice in our experience. Like you said, the channels, especially first ice. If you're one of those daring people who wants to get out there with like 1.5 inches, 2 inches of ice, which I'm sure some of you guys do, and yeah, I see your pictures on Facebook. I'm not
Push
that
the
guy.
bucket.
I'm not that mad at them anymore. I get to catch them all year long. So when it's 1 inch of ice, you guys, that's your lick. I know my partner Matt will be out there. I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes, yeah, no, that's you guys. But
But
you
this,
know,
this being said, too, when they're coming out in the springtime, those same cribs that you're fishing in the fall, as they're staging up waiting to go into those channels, they're going to be
Right.
loaded up in post-spawn. You know,
Yep.
in May when there's nothing in L channel or any T channel. Go ahead.
Number one rule I always taught about crappie fishing, especially, is if you're waiting for spring spawn, you're missing out on the best fish.
yes.
Absolutely.
I mean, at ice out, it's great.
Before spawn.
A lot of them
Sure.
do. A lot of the big ones are on the cribs before they're even in the channels.
yeah.
Or even in September, October before they go in for ice. We get some of our biggest fish of the year off the cribs.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good call. You know, I mean, they spawn, and that's kind of, for us, in my mind, like when I'm booking trips, that's almost like the end of my whole crappie thing. I'm not necessarily waiting for the spawn. That's kind of like, you know, there's certain backwaters and, you know, there's shallow water bays and stuff where we know they end up at for spawn. But like you said, Mike, I mean, 3 weeks or 4 weeks before that, it's even better, typically. I mean, yeah, you're going to catch more of those big fish because you'll get some of the big females in there. But the numbers-wise, is just way better
So,
before that.
real quick, what weeks or what months are you guys starting crappie fishing around here locally?
Yeah.
Good man. Good
Yeah,
answer.
right answer.
Late March can be fantastic before they put any water in the system. I mean, we've had probably some of our best days guiding before there's even, normal pool of water in our chain. So
Yeah, you just got to find the deeper water channels and stuff like that. You know, maybe if there's a little bit of current or something running around in there, it's pushing bait. You know, that certainly helps. But yeah, where they end up.
May's done here though. Usually, you might get a little bit going in the beginning of May, but
Yeah, it's weird though, you know, because there are some channels that tend to hold for a long time. Like this L channel here, for some reason, just tends to hold longer than the rest of the chain. I don't know why. I mean, you'll be down on T channel and there's nothing in there, and then you come up here on L channel and there, Ed and I had a day here last year where it was like, we sat there. I mean, we could have sat there for 10 more hours and caught fish, but we were like, let's go change location just to get a different. I mean, we were sitting there forever just banging the snot out of crappies.
of course, I like to think I know what the fish are doing right. So I think that it's like, oh, the North Lakes, like geographically, they're further north. So maybe that 15-mile difference between Pistaki and Channel maybe has something to do with the temperature that these channels are seeing a little bit longer hanging on to. Maybe the depth and the volume that the lakes have with those channels being something that might make those fish hang on the North Lake channels a little bit longer than they do on, say, Fox Lake or Pistaki.
Sure. Absolutely. So yeah, I mean, going back to where we were at was the ice was basically, the last open waters where the first ice happens at. They tend to stay on those cribs through the ice very well. There's a lot of cribs out here that are, obviously there's DNR cribs, there's crib. I mean, people have been throwing stuff in these lakes for, decades. And I mean, those people, not us, of course, because we would never do that. But there are cribs out there that we might know about that we, might have had.
There's all
No.
kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
Use
So
your
there's
side
stuff down
imaging,
there.
guys.
So find
yeah.
that stuff while you're in the open water, right? Go out there in your boat and use your side imaging, and that's what we do because there's a lot of stuff that people that live out here. I mean, there's even stuff by docks. I know clients of mine are like, yeah, 10 feet off my dock, I threw this, and it just from meeting so many people out here and you guys being local, knowing that even bait store owners and stuff and old resort owners are throwing stuff in. So all that kind of stuff is very good to target.
But check it year to year because they tumble around with water going out and stuff. I've
They do tumble
checked
around.
a few of someone else's brush piles that moved around a little just because the ice went out in the spring. Now it's 50 yards over from where it originally was.
Or
So-
somebody caught it trolling. One of the musky
Yep.
guys caught it trolling and took half of it off
Absolutely.
there. So I've done that too. So
But these cribs can obviously be dynamite first ice if you're quick to them. If you're Swiss cheese and kicking in holes, maybe not so much. I was going to get into presentation on first ice fish
Yep, go
being
ahead.
kind of
Absolutely.
plastics. We love plastics until they don't work anymore. The first couple weeks I'm out, usually plastics are working pretty well for crappies, perch, whites, yellows.
yeah, don't really even need live bait, quite honestly. Just like at the end of the year or in the spring, when you're in the channels doing it, you don't need live bait. It's all plastics,
I won't point to bluegill chucks on camera here because I know Ron from Juniors would be pissed. But the wigglers, the larvae, the spiders, the real small stuff, the wedges, cut them down, cut a couple legs off, make them half a profile of what they used to be. And when that stops working, we got into a kind of a neat bite last year where typically guys are using 16th ounce spoons or maybe a 32nd or 64th ounce
Andy
jig.
really dialed this in, honestly. I mean, there was a lot of struggling going on for a couple of days, and we're like,
We were sitting on fish. Our Vexilars and stuff were loaded, but
they're lit up, and we were just seeing all these fish coming up, and we were really missing out on. I mean, you were out one a couple of those days too, Jay. And then all of a sudden, like Andy really got on this good thing of the
just
downsizing.
kept on downsizing. We got to a point where like there was no color. It was so small. Like I think it was smaller than an 80th ounce, maybe 100th. If anybody's taking notes, but I mean,
Yeah.
they were freaking lead color, a half a spike, not a waxy, like real selective. And these big crappies would come up during our moon set, whatever lunar event we had for the day. And boy, that was something we really started applying too, because I never ever fished around the moon for panfish through the ice, but we got videos. I mean, doubled up with 12 inchers, and it was just
I
astronomical.
never even used anything that small for ice fishing.
Yeah, it
I'm
was
like,
kinda neat.
where do I buy this stuff?
Yeah.
Like I had to go and load up on all these little tiny
Juniors
baits.
Jig Tails, Mr. Ron, good
had 'em,
good
yeah.
man. Yep. So
And that definitely helped us out in the ice season when things got a little tough, or when some of these cribs that were probably getting pressured pretty hard because we're on them.
guys are
3
kicking
times a
holes
week.
in every day.
And then we show up and guys are already on them, half hour before we get there and whatever. I mean, we're on Metro Waters. I can't get mad. Like, I understand it. I'm not one of those guys, but this is my crib. Like, it is what it is. So
flipping though, big profiles. Right after that kind of got dull and boring on the cribs, we started sliding out with jigging wraps and big buckshot spoons and pounding mud out on Petite's Basin, and we did really well. Not as much for giant white bass, but we did really well for large yellows. Whites
crappies.
mixed in, crappies mixed in, but just overall a lot more action than you were seeing on all these shallow cribs that all these anglers have been pressuring for weeks at a time.
And I think that's the thing, right? A lot of times, well, obviously the
like
oxygen
early
gets
February.
deeper too. The oxygen is out there too, so that's where they kind of slide out to.
Yep.
But that's kind of something to think about even throughout the year when you're fishing. Is like when these fish do get that hard of pressure, right? There's a lot of times where you just really downsize. Whether it's panfish, muskies, walleyes, whatever it is, you start using. I mean, there's times of the year where I've had, and Andy's been there too, where we have 6-7 fish days for muskies, and we're using baits that are tiny. Like stuff that you would never think is for muskies. So,
Like a MEPS.
right, just silly stuff. And then you talk to guys who are using muskie, typical muskie gear all day, and they haven't caught a fish, So it's really trying to figure out what the fish are doing at that time, And there's always somebody who's figuring it out. I mean, God knows there are bad days out here, and I mean, you come to launch and everyone's talking about how bad it is. But there are days where, you come in and you talk to 10 guys and 3 guys say it was great and the rest say it was terrible. So someone's figuring it out. There's things going on. I think a lot of times with these pressured fish is you got to downsize. That's that, and then sometimes we were talking about like getting out in the open
Dead
water.
sticks too were clutch. I mean, everybody's out there jigging away, but
Yeah.
couple turns off bottom and just sit there and watch it. And
Yeah.
boy, you'd be amazed at how many times that thing got kissed, and I put on a smaller one to get kissed, and I'd miss another one. And then finally we found one that I barely tie on there, but that's something that worked for us last year, so we'll try it again.
Right. And I know that Mike and some of you guys had some really good success with how we're talking about moving out deeper. I don't want to give away your bite, obviously, but yeah, I mean, it's we were doing it on a different lake, but you guys were doing either way, it was the same thing that was happening. You get in that mid-ice season, and a lot of the shallow water stuff, these guys do have like perm shack stuff in the shallow water, start talking about how bad fishing is and things get tough. Well, a lot of that oxygen's moving out into the open water, the deep water, and these fish follow that, and you're getting, a lot of times what's happening is you'll get them kind of like circling around the basin. They're just kind of aimlessly swimming around, and you'll get waves of them. Is that how you guys were going to be, like a wave of a bunch of fish, and all of a sudden it's like, all right, they're gone. Then you just kind of hang out, and then you get that wave come back around. So they're out there just kind of roaming around the basin, which, by the way, now that we have a shad population out here for the last 10 years or so, there is always, if there's shad out in the basin, there's always fish in the basin. when I say the basin, I'm talking about like the deepest part of our lakes, right? If you're out in, 25 to 38 foot of water, I mean, I've caught walleyes out there. I've caught muskies. I've caught everything out there. Like people, sometimes they take them out and they're like, "What are we doing in 36 foot of water, Chris?" And I'm like, "Oh, you'll see." We're not fishing on the bottom in 36 because our thermocline is usually sitting around 17, 16 to 18 out here because of the dark water. But they're in between, 7 and 16. They're just kind of out there hanging out and following bait. So that throughout the whole season, there's always fish out there. And we actually got on we didn't dial it all the way through, but we got on a walleye bite out in the middle of the basin this year, and I caught some while I was muskie fishing, and we were doing a little bit of experimenting out there. And I think that there was more to be found, and there is, and I know that.
Kind of the same program, probably where you guys start for 'em on channel and Catherine, like that 18 to 21, kind of the sweet range, and then sliding on out. Kind of the same thing we ran into post spawn was just following that topography on those numbers with some deeper diving baits. So anyhow, I'm off topic. Back to ice fishing.
Yeah, I mean, and then as you move through the season here, after you get out into the basin, that all happens. Like last ice for me, first ice and last, I mean, it's all good, but that's when you could really get into some crazy action again, is that last ice. There's times where we're obviously putting boards, 10-foot board just to get back out on that safe ice because the fishing is so good. Something that some of you guys may have noticed while you were out there ice fishing this last year, or even just in the spring if you get out there, and I'm sure some of these guys know about it, but like, I've always known that we have a perch population here, right? We know that because we catch a lot of those dinky perch throughout the middle of the season, especially around the weeds, and then 1 out of 10 will be a decent fish. But there's actually quite a few really nice perch. If anyone knows where those things are at during the summer, I mean, catch me on the side and help me out because I can't just keep pounding nice perch. But last ice in the, ice out.
Like February new moon last year.
There was just perch, and they were all really nice, almost like Lake Michigan
10,
perch.
11s, couple that were pushing 12, I think.
Yeah.
Just big
and we were finding them on
pre-spawners.
the sand. It was sand and mud. That's what they wanted. We were in maybe 10, 12 foot of water, maybe 8 foot of water here and there on flats. And that really impressed me and kind of opened my eyes to what kind of perch population we actually have out here.
We even had days where we were getting them on like minnow heads and spoons messing around like, holy cow, this might actually be like a fishable bite here.
Right.
So it's optimism, and we want to know more if you guys are on something.
Yeah.
Let
Has
us
anyone
know.
else experienced any of that with the perch? Has anyone seen that? Have you guys seen that?
Two years ago, right after ice, they were sitting right in this channel.
Were they?
I got several 12.
Right.
15s.
Okay.
Yeah. They do that, definitely.
It was crazy, I'm like, what the hell? Because usually it's just crappie.
Full of spawn?
Yeah.
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 Yeah, we noticed that too in some of the channels south. I noticed that we'll do the same thing. We'll get the crappies and the piers, and then we'll just drop some like dead minnows and stuff on the bottom. And I'm always watching that one because I like to eat them. And I mean, I try not to take too many of the perch that are spawning for sure. But I mean, some of those are coming home, that's for sure. But we
Good
definitely
eats.
have a better perch population than I think that we're given credit for. God knows what they're doing in the summertime.
Getting them on plastics out here.
Yeah.
Minnows, just plastic.
Really?
Fish for our crop.
You were getting them, okay.
I was getting them maybe in June a couple of years back. As you come into channel, or not channel, as you come in Marie, right there where the flagpole house is.
Yeah.
Right at about the 12-foot mark. Because
Were you really?
it's the same thing that you're talking about. It's mud and sand mix right there.
That hard to soft bottom transition, they really key in on.
I was actually trying for walleye.
Okay.
Getting about 14, 15 perch, all about that 10 and 12.
You can do that in front of that little stretch in front of Thirsty Turtle there too, kind of between the willow and the piers there. That's a nice little, get some perch, couple walleyes out on the edges.
Yeah, I've noticed that spot too. Like a lot of times when I'm walleye fishing, I'll get a decent amount of perch in there too. So that's something to think about. Like the last ice thing it was really good. I started targeting perch more than I was even targeting really anything else because you just don't get to see them out here as often. And the only other place I know where we can get really nice perch like that is Lake Michigan, which we were doing that too for a while, which was fantastic. Actually, they're in right now. It's pretty good. But that kind of takes us through the ice season and the fish migrations, I think, as far as the panfish go. And that's really around here on the chain. I mean, you could do a walleye bite. There's times where all of us actually will get out and do it. For us, the most solid bite that we've experienced is either the first light or last light. You could catch them in between.
Catch 2 or 3 if you jig all day long, probably.
It can be a
but
tough
yeah.
go, but that first light and that last light, I've done very well. Where I've actually caught a limit, like in between like 6 and 8, and then like after it hits 8:30, it's like whew, they just disappear.
Yeah, the night bite's not there.
No, and then the same thing on the back part of the day, like right as it starts getting dark, and then maybe an hour in the dark, and that's about that for the walleyes. I used to set up a ton of tip-ups out here when I was doing ice. Honestly, we don't do a ton of that out here. I mean, I think the pike, maybe up here on these lakes, we might get a couple more pike. But I've noticed that the pike population being not as good as it was maybe 20 years ago. And I feel like some of that has to be due to the drawdown. That's just my take on it. I think the spawning habitat is just not there because
when they need it to be, right?
Right. I just feel like they're not spawning as well. I'm not catching a lot of small pike either. I don't know if any of you other guys have, if that's something that I'm just missing out on. But
Like
most of
34
the
and up?
pike are like 30 something and to 40. I mean, they're really nice pike, but I'm not catching 22s, 23s very often. I mean, here and there, of course. Has anyone else experienced that? Am I kind of right on? Is that about right?
They were pretty strong on Lake Marie there for a while.
Yeah.
2-3 years ago, or 10, 15 years ago.
No, last year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, they
But
were,
all bigger ones.
yeah, where we were catching muskie.
Yes.
On the break, all of a sudden the pike were coming in. You know,
I've had some weird days. Yeah, I've had days like that where all of a sudden you're just pike. When I was filming with Sarek 2 years ago, we were out here, and I've never had a day like this, like that prior. And we had like 8 pike, and they were all like 35 to 40 inches. I'm like,
Where'd that come
every
from?
time I'm like, fish, and you get up and it's like, you're about to get it on film, and it's like, no, it's a pike. I mean, it's great, but for the muskie hunter, it doesn't really work. So, but there was some really nice pike in there. So I don't know if there's just I think there's missing years of spawns. That's my.
I think depending on how bad our winters are, or oxygen deprivation, how hot our summers get, where the thermocline goes, or if
Right.
it goes,
Yeah.
all that stuff takes.
So we don't set up a ton of the tip-ups on these lakes in particular. I'll do that more on, some other lakes, Eagle Lake and some of these little smaller lakes where you can get a lot of pike action, and some bass action. But as far as the chain, I mean, if guys want to, we can. We'll play around with it. But it's such a great bite for panfish and, like I said, sometimes walleyes in the morning and evening. Besides that, I did want to talk a little bit about this bucket here, right? So I have a friend of mine who's actually one of my neighbors who started making these buckets. They're called Big Ass Buckets for very obvious reason. And the man who makes them is no small man himself. He's a good sized guy. I think some of you guys know him, right? You guys know Kevin. He's about 6'3" and maybe about 450, something like that. He's a big boy.
big
So
boy.
if it handles him, this will handle most people on the planet. It's nice because it can actually fit a 7-gallon bucket in there.
You gonna open it up and show me? Or?
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
It looks nice, but
Yeah.
what do we got in here?
Well, it's an empty bucket as we sit right now, but it's nice. It has a couple different uses for me anyway. I like carrying when I have a big bucket like this. I put all my Vexilars in there. Not all of them, but I could, if I had 4 of these, I could just put all our Vexilars, which is going to happen. Put our Vexilars in and then put them on the quad or wherever we're going to put them on and slide them out there instead of everyone having to hold their Vexilars moving out. So it's good for storage, and then for sitting down. I mean, it's actually pretty comfortable. He's got a foam pad on there, and he's actually got a locking device that he uses. All you gotta do is take this out, flip it upside down, and it ratchets down. So if you're driving with it, the top won't fall off, which it shouldn't anyway because it screws down. But it's just another nice feature. I think he's selling them for like $40, which is not a bad deal, honestly. I mean, I know what he puts into it, and all of us as bait makers. I mean, I know some of the guys in here are bait makers. If we broke it all down right, we're making $10 an hour. But it's a great hobby. It's a great passion to have, and that's why he's doing it. I don't think that there's anything wrong with making a few bucks on your time especially if it's a quality product. So I do have some of his cards if you guys are interested in. And the other use for this too is for us muskie guys. This is a great way to haul around suckers, right?
I was already thinking aerator on that thing, dude.
Absolutely. You put an aerator, and I told Kevin that. I'm like, dude, I'll take it to the muskie show, and I know guys will love it for muskie suckers. So when you're coming into Muskie Tails and buying suckers, maybe Kurt will have a few of these in the. You hear that, Kurt? Maybe. Yeah. See, there you go, man. You could. I'm right there. Right, big ass sucker bucket.
The SS Liverpool. Fucking good to go.
Yeah, so I did want to show that. I told Kevin I would, and I kind of seen it, coming to fruition here, and it's cool that he's actually got this started. He lives right down the street from me, so it's a neat product that he's putting out there. Obviously I wanted to hit the ice thing, but I know that there's a lot of muskie fishermen in this room too, so I kind of wanted to touch on a few bases really quickly. Yeah, I know we don't have all the time in the world, and I don't want to bore you guys with whatever, but the muskie fishery on the chain, I know a lot of you guys are out there doing it and putting in your time. I'm happy to say that, since I've been guiding now, we've actually put a lot of time into helping stock the chain and be a part of, not just with the muskies, but with the walleyes and everything else.
Trying to maintain a little better relationship with the fisheries biologist too, Chris.
Right, the fisheries biologist. Actually, Kurt's a friend of him too. He lives in the town that we live in Cary, Frank Jakubisik. And so I get a lot of my information from him, which is really nice, because when I go out and speak like this, I'm not just being an armchair biologist. I actually sit down with this guy, and Kurt's been there too. We'll do lunch or dinner or something, and I'm in his ear asking 40,000 questions and want to know everything that's biologically going on out here, which he is the expert. The last thing I ever want to do is hurt our system. So as a guide, I always ask him about numbers and is it okay to take these walleyes or these. And that's kind of something that we pride ourselves on. But getting back to the muskies, we also help with our club, and what we do is stocking the muskies out here. And I think that I'd like to take a little bit of credit for the fact that now the muskie population, the stocking is going to go up, right? So they were only allowing, I think it was like 22,000 or 2,200 a year, whatever it was, for the chain. And now they just took the cap off, right? Because I started sending pictures to Frank, and I'm like, look at my locator. And I mean, there would just be shad everywhere. Obviously, you guys have been out in the basin or driving through the chain and just seeing shad that are just, piles of them. Especially if you get out here in like October, November, December. I mean, there's just piles of shad. And I'm like, I can't even throw a bait without hooking them. Mm-hmm. I mean, it gets to be a little bit ridiculous. So I certainly think that we can up our numbers. So in the last year or so, he has taken that cap off. So basically what's going on now is the state puts X amount in, and the clubs put X amount in. And it's basically how much they can afford to put in, right? I mean, we're never going to have 10,000 fish a year, which I think that would be too many, my personal opinion.
But we're losing so many to probably delayed mortality from us catching them in the summertime, or
Sure.
2, 3, 4, 5 times a year, getting stressed out. Whatever the conditions may be, these fish are, not to say a renewable resource, but just like our walleyes are stocked here to be eaten, our muskies are put here to be fished for.
100%.
So
right, guys? I mean,
that's why we're putting 2,500 fish a year in here, and thanks to Chris, Frank, and a few other people at FRV and Chicagoland.
FRV and Chicagoland have been
yeah,
awesome.
those are the two major clubs. But now we're going to start seeing, hopefully, maybe 2.5, 3 fish per acre here in the next few years. So
Right.
it could really be good.
The stockings went up, and we already have a fantastic population. Some days it feels like we don't have any fish left in here. God knows I've been out here and touched every piece of water and thrown everything at them and can't get one to bite or even take a look. But I've also had 10 fish days out here, and
Having mega imaging now, it's kind of humbling on some tough days because you'll see your fish.
Oh yeah,
You'll
you
see
see them
your
where they're
fish.
at. I mean, I've been out here on bad days, and I'm like, he's right there.
Yeah.
You can see him. They just don't bite. But
Right.
there is quite a few of them in here. We're never going to have that population of really giant fish, right? Like everyone always asks me, or they'll tell me, oh, I saw like a 54-inch. I saw. It's not. I mean, I'm not saying it can't happen, right? I mean, could there be like a genetic freak that comes out of nowhere and ends up being 54? I mean, anything could happen, right? the reality of it is, coming from Frank, our fish grow fast and die fast. That's just what happens with all our fish out here. It's a dark water, low thermocline, shallow thermocline. There's a lot of pressure. There's boating. There's all this stuff that you have to take into consideration, that these fish are just not going to live to their full potential, right?
So
And-
back to the 50s real quick, not to cut you off, but between Chris and I, it's probably about 300 fish a year that we boat guiding out here. And for the last couple of years, we each got a half dozen around that 48 mark, none over.
right.
So for all those guys you see with pictures of them that, unless they're on a bump board and you can see Lake Marie in the background, I think that there's a lot of upper 40 and mid 40-inch fish, a stellar year class of 45 to 47s right now.
Absolutely.
And I think in the next few years, if we don't have real bad winters and real bad summers, there is a possibility we might have
There's 50 inchers here.
start seeing more of those 48s and 9s, though. Maybe. You know,
Yeah.
we'll have to see how our weather holds, because obviously we've been a little sporadic with that. Being,
That and obviously in the summertime, we always tell guys when it gets around 80, 81 degrees on the water temperature that, please lay off them. That's a general rule, right? That doesn't mean that if you're out in the morning and it's 76 and then by 1 o'clock it's 80, you have to pull the plug, and because God knows I don't. That's not like it's 79, the fish is fine, 80 dies. Like, that's not what happens. There's a lot of that kind of crazy stuff that people argue about on the internet. If it's, consistent warm weather and we're consistent 79 to 83 degree water temps, I put my rods away and I don't fish them.
go fish Lake Geneva.
Right.
Thermocline's at 22, 26,
Right, and that's what we do, right? You don't want to come out here and kill fish. Guys, if you love the fish so much, you wouldn't stick hooks in its face, right? That's kind of what it comes down to. Fish die, right?
Yeah.
It's part of what happens, and that's part of this game. And
That's why we hook them.
Right, and we
Yeah.
understand it, but we try and give them the best chance that we can at living, even though we're sticking hooks in their face and doing all that. I'd love to see there be, I think with the influx of stocking, we'll have a better chance with more fish in the system, seeing more big ones, because that ball will get passed around a little bit more, as opposed to catching, like he said, if we do 300 fish a year between us, we're recycling a few fish, and every time you catch a fish, it shortens his lifespan, right? It gets stressed out. That just happens.
I had caught the same one-eyed muskie 4 times this year on the same bait, on the same point.
Yeah, so that fish will be dead next year.
We call her lucky, but
Either that
yeah.
or it's going to need like a prescription for Xanax.
Yeah,
It's
she
so stressed out.
comes up to the 8 shaking,
Yeah.
Old lucky, one eye.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, if we're catching that many, obviously there's other guys out here doing it. So that's
These
just the
fish are
case.
just their population gets damaged every year. There's a lot of really good anglers in this metropolis we got between Chicago, Milwaukee, and Rockford, and we got 7-8 million people knocking at the chain's door. Lot of muskie anglers. The big influx too with all the my generation, us millennials.
The younger guys have
right?
picked up muskie fishing.
Yeah.
That is definitely something that I've seen happen in the last.
They all reel
10
left-handed
years.
though. I don't know what's wrong with them, but
They do.
Yeah.
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 But that's happened. We're getting a lot more muskie anglers and a lot more good muskie anglers.
About 50 or 80,000 more than I think there was 10 years ago.
Something like that. Yeah,
Something.
there's a lot of younger guys
reading.
doing it. So, the population is fantastic. The size is fantastic for a metro lake. I go up to northern Wisconsin, and I have days. I'll take this body of water over a lot of lakes up in northern Wisconsin.
You
know?
used to have to. I remember like my 14-footer days in my little boat. You had to catch 5 fish to get one over 40.
Here?
Yep.
Yeah. It's not
and
that
now
anymore.
I'd say if you get 3 of them, one might be, but if not, the 4th definitely will be, and it'll probably be a mid-40s fish, 43 to 46.
Yeah,
So-
there's a lot of 38 to 44, 45 inch fish
All the
in here
tournament
right now.
postings too this year, guys, like the challenge. I don't know if you noticed the 37 to like 41, 37, 39, and 40, 41s. There's a ton of those year classes right now. Really good numbers of them. So it's good next few years to get your kids into it if they're not, or get someone who might like the sport into it if they're not already.
Any questions on the muskie things? I know there's always questions for
Mike Pierce,
No kidding. There he is.
all the nice signs you put up.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. All those signs that are put at all the
here,
launches
here.
that you guys are seeing, Mike helped that happen, and the FRV, that was ever since you joined the FRV, Mike, honestly, and props to you, is, you've done a lot of really good things for, the chain itself, and then for the surrounding bodies of water. Mike, actually, here's a real quick snippet of Mike Pierce, right? So Mike came out with me the first time I think musky, or you had musky fish one time before, right? The first, huh? On Delavan, right? Which is, God, that's a tough lake for
There's
muskies.
like 3 muskies left in there.
Right, yeah. Right, exactly. The first day he comes out musky fish with me, which was like right in the beginning of like, I wasn't too far into guiding at that point. I hadn't been guiding for that long. But anyway, he ends up catching 8 fish his first time out musky fishing, right? And I'm like, this guy. You know, he's like, and he tells me, he's like, oh, I thought it was supposed to be like hard to catch these things. And I'm like,
It's gotten harder.
yeah, well, yeah, now you deserve it now. But I think in like 5 trips, we probably had like 35 fish together. I mean, it was just like 8 fish, 6 fish, 4 fish, 5 fish. It was like, if I needed to catch a fish, I'd just call Mike and be like, dude, we need to go fishing. So, and that was what, 8, 9 years ago? But Mike is definitely, so he's fell in love with the sport. He's actually bought my old boat. And he's fell in love with the sport, and he got involved with the FRV, and he's done some really good things as far as putting up signs at all the launches, and then also you're getting into the stocking program, which you've been working diligently at, and now they've been stocking at other lakes besides the chain, like Long Lake.
100 and long,
100?
200.
200.
Introduced them in there.
Another force,
And there was
80 or
already
90
fish
in
in there.
Geneva.
There's
They
fish.
put 10 in last year.
Oh, they only did 10. I've caught 2, so I caught 2 of the 10.
Well,
And I was bass fishing, so I can't even say I'm that good.
you know, Frank put in 2,000 this year. He put in 1,000 at the Turtle, and 1,000 at the Sandbar. And FRV put 500 in.
Okay.
That was $7,400 worth of fish.
It's expensive.
500. They're $11.50 for 12 to 14-inch fish.
The extended grills.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And those 2,500 fish we put in, Frank said the likelihood of those making 30 inches is about 50%.
50%.
Yeah.
Wow.
I thought it was almost up at like 60, 70% or something survivability. Dang.
Even with the extended growth.
That's tough.
Wow. So there you go. I mean, that's why musky guys are so diligent about how people handle the fish, because they're very expensive and a lot of them may not live. I mean, they don't naturally reproduce in here. In saying that, you know, I always get the people who go, well, there has to be some. Yeah, there might be some, but there's nothing sustainable. And there's a long list of reasons why it doesn't happen, and I could bore you with a bunch of science and stuff.
Bottom
but-
composition is one.
Yeah, there's a long list. There's nothing that's gonna uphold our muskie population unless we're stocking, right? So, we've talked about doing, you know, certain things here, even if we have to do like a fundraiser for some of the muskie stocking. And God knows I'm up for doing it for the walleye stocking too. Like, though, I mean, we stock a lot of them. I mean, we're getting even the overflow from the hatchery. I think it was last year we had, I forgot what it was. It was like 3 million or something that he had over, but they were just
They were fry.
they were fried, which I asked him, he's like maybe 2%. But still a lot of, I mean, it's fish, you know, I mean, we're going to still have fish in here. So Mike's done a whole lot for the muskie program. What was your question, man? I'm sorry.
Talking about,
What's that?
those signs we were talking about, there's one right outside the door. And I just picked up another 10 today. So by springtime, there'll be 40 of them. Almost ready to launch on the chain.
If you
That's
haven't
huge.
seen them, it just goes over handling and kind of basic tools to have and stuff if you're unfamiliar.
And it's nice too because it says the size limit, right? I mean, I've seen it.
Keeps them, but
I mean, I've seen it. You know, I seen a guy walk away with a stringer with one that was like 36 inches, and he thought it was a pike. The fish was dead. There was nothing I could do about it. I mean, I'm not going to chastise him, you know, like.
I went into a bar down by Spring Lake, I think it was. We walked into a restaurant with Gallagher, and this guy had like a 34-inch muskie mounted on the wall.
Oh, jeez.
He was an Asian guy. We're like, hey, you know that's an illegal fish? He goes, I don't care. It's the biggest fish I ever caught. It's going on my wall.
Yeah, you know, and back in the day, there was a lot of that, though. A lot of guys still have 34 inchers. You know, I mean, Ron would attest to that, right? Back in the day when it was a 30-incher to be, you know, or a 32-incher to be illegal in Wisconsin, all of us fibs were running up there and catching legal fish and bringing them back here to mount or eat, you know? I mean, that was before my time, but Ron, being old as dirt, that was certainly
A seasoned veteran. Seasoned
exactly.
veteran. There we go.
So he remembers those days. But yeah, I mean, we try to do everything we can with the fish here, but I think it, fortunately or unfortunately, it just is what it is, right? I don't think we're going to see an influx of giant fish. I mean, God knows, like the biggest fish I have seen in here personally was the one that I was out with Jay that day, and he had up next to the boat and hooked it and lost it. And my biggest fish out of here is it was 49 3/4, like a hair shy of 50, and I felt like that fish could have given that fish definitely a run for its money. I felt like that was a good 50, 51 incher. That's the biggest one I personally have seen on the hooks, and that's coming from someone who gets to see a lot of fish. And I mean, that's, again, guys, I mean, I've been guiding for 10 years, and I'm out here every day. I'm not saying I'm the best fisherman in the chain, but just by God,
You would have ran into one.
I would have ran into at least a couple if there's that many 53, 54 inchers. They're just not swimming around here. A lot of the ones you hear, like the guy at the Algonquin Dam, like I heard that story 8,000 times when it happened. It was in the newspaper, but he caught I'll give it a 38 incher, and he's holding it like this, and he thought he just didn't know. I mean, he's like, he goes, I didn't have a something to measure it with. He goes, but I'll estimate it at 50 inches. Remember, he's a man,
It's
right?
not over
So-
50. Yeah.
We have a tendency to sometimes exaggerate. So, and he was holding the fish like this. I mean, I could clearly tell that was not a 50-inch fish.
It's not even a 15-pound fish.
It was like,
no.
well, that's a good estimate, but I mean, sure.
So here's something random food for thought here, guys, before we wrap it up. All this weird weather we're having, not sure if it's going to be something that's here to stay, and it's just kind of the evolution of our weather over time, but I do believe we didn't have as hot for as long of a summer as we usually do, those triple-digit days. No. I don't think we're going to have as hard of a freeze this year unless March is locked up all the way until the 30th. We may start seeing a little better survivability on some of our fish. Never know. So, the shad population took a big hit in the freeze between 17 and spring of 18. I know you guys probably all saw them and smelled them floating all over.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say most of our shad right now, we got 2-3 years of juveniles between 3 and 5 inches, and maybe one good year class of 8 inchers, big ones.
Yeah, I'd like to see the shad population actually pop back up a little bit.
It's
to be
pretty
honest
bad.
with you.
I'd estimate we're at 25-30% of what we did have in 2017 when it was
I would
Catherine
agree.
had 30 feet of bait from top to bottom,
Yeah,
So-
and when we don't get those really cold winters is when they'll actually thrive. So we might actually, when it gets really cold like that, they die off, and then you see them floating around. But yeah, that's a good point. Who knows? It's ever evolving out here. In every system you fish. I mean, especially the guys who've been doing it for longer than I have. But I've been fishing since I was literally 3 years old, and you see systems have their ups and their downs. It's just going to happen. I mean, that happens to every lake. It's happened to Delvin. It happens to Geneva. Every lake on the planet is going to have its ups and downs. We're lucky enough that I haven't really seen any. The only thing that I personally experienced this year that I could say was a major down for us was the eater walleye side. It was really hard to find eater walleyes. I mean, we were catching the snot out of big ones, which was really. We were catching a lot of 25 to 27 inchers. I mean, almost every trip. For a while there, it was really good, but it was really hard for us to put.
To find 3 or 4 17 inchers off the same spot was almost impossible.
Did everyone else here experience that? Has anyone else
a lot
say-
of spot hopping and yeah.
I had you, a lot of bigger fish, but I couldn't.
And the year
That and
before
a lot
that
of
was
small, dinky fish.
year before that was all slot fish. We had I think we had a couple days where we were 50 or more fish, and they were all 18 to 23s. Beautiful day of fishing, not one to take home to eat. So
Right.
Selective harvest, gentlemen. Our slots here 14 to 18, obviously for a good reason, but if those fish aren't around, let's not try to cut all the 27s, right?
Right.
So
What's that, Mike?
We definitely didn't get as many of those this year, but we did find more.
Eaters?
I was talking with Lincoln, I was talking with Lincoln a few times, and he was struggling a little bit, and he even called me. He's like, what are you doing? Because
Upper River, man.
we were getting them, but back to the big fish on the walleyes. So I work in Spring Grove, and right by the fish hatchery there. I talk to Frank all the time too. I see them bring them in the spring when they shock for their spawning reasons.
Yeah.
I had absolutely no clue there was that many giant walleye in here.
Yeah, there's a ton.
He had at least 3 or 4 pushing 10 pounds. In there.
Yeah.
And some of which were males. It was just
Yeah.
They just, I mean, I got pictures of them sitting in the thing.
I saw him at the sandbar when he pulled up the one day.
Oh, yeah.
It's just disgusting watching them pull them out of there. I'm like, you know how hard we work to catch those fish sometimes?
Yeah.
You know? And they're just, I mean, big fish.
And I attest that too. Again, I attest that for sure to the shad, because prior to that, he even said that if he pulled up one 10-pounder, it was something to talk about. Now it's like, yeah, it's numbers of them, maybe like a
Yeah, our
dozen
20,
of them
our
where
27
they're-
to 29s in the spring and fall, pre and post, they're definitely big fish now.
In the like 6 to 8 pound or whatever,
Tons of them.
loaded.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh crap.
Oh yeah,
those are big
a lot of
That's a
football
nice
size.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some good ones here, man. Any other questions? Dan?
I know you said shad are the primary forage for muskies. What else is there?
Perch.
Everything? Anything? Yeah, I mean, that's what it
There's
comes.
no ranking, it's just shad and
Then
then
everything else.
And then a
Yeah,
meal
I'd
of-
say
meal of
probably like the
opportunity.
rough fish. You know, more of the rough fish. That's kind of what muskies eat.
Small carp.
Yeah, smaller carp, just bullheads, that kind of stuff. I've seen them eating sheephead. I've seen them eating white bass out here where they're choking on them, and like I've actually seen them at the top of the water, and I kind of watch them and they'll like spit them out,
trying to, yeah,
kick it out. But
yeah.
yeah, it's shad and then kind of everything else, and people have kind of the wrong theory on muskies. Are like, oh, they're gonna eat all the walleyes, they're gonna eat all this that. That's not the case. That's just not how it works. Are they going to eat walleyes? Absolutely. You know what else eats walleyes? We do. And walleyes eat other walleyes, and it just, that's the evolution of what's happening. There's never going to be like, I mean, there's certain anglers who love to blame the muskies for, the walleyes aren't here, the crappies. It has nothing to do with the muskies. Actually, most
The most
walleye lakes
balanced
that are with
fisheries.
muskies are
Yeah.
they balance it out. They eat more of the rough fish. They actually do a very good job.
Look at Lake
that.
of the Woods, aka the walleye capital of the world.
Right.
Quite a few fish in there, muskies. Yeah.
Leech Lake. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a ton of these. Lake St. Clair.
Vermilions and
St.
other-
Clair
yeah.
is absolutely loaded with muskies, and it's an amazing walleye fishery. So yeah, it has nothing to do with that. But if there's any other questions, guys, yep.
So, I know you talked about your 49 was the biggest one you've seen out there. Do you think that you will end up seeing anything bigger, or is it just because maybe the habitat's just not going to allow them to get any bigger, or?
There's a few there that are bigger. I mean, I know of some 50-inchers that were caught. There's usually like, I'd say maybe one legit one every year.
2007, there was like, what was that, a 50 and a half or something? That was the last real big fish that I.
Yeah.
No
and
words on
like
a
I
bump
said, I've
board.
seen that one that, when Jay and I was fishing. It just, this fishery is, at this point, because of all those factors of the pressure and the muddy water and just, there's a long list, it's just not going to allow. But maybe if we up the stocking, then, there's more of those fish to go around and they're not just, we're not catching the same fish constantly. I think that's a big part of it is like they're getting caught a lot. But that's, I mean, what are we going to do, stop fishing them? I mean, that's not going to happen. That's just part of the game. And, I mean, we're in a metro area. For you talk to guys. So here's an example real quickly. So I went up to northern Wisconsin to speak. And the guy that was introducing me goes, he goes, before he introduced me, he goes, how many muskies do you catch a year? Maybe like 30 or 40? And I'm like, about 150, 170. And he's like, are you serious? He's like, that's better than my numbers up here. I'm like, we have a ton of muskies. So it gives you an idea of how good our muskie fishery really is.
Yeah, don't tell
Like,
anybody.
It's that good. I mean, I've heard guys complain, oh, we need more muskies. We need that, I mean, I think they're doing a fantastic job. It's more of dialing that bite in and being a little bit different than how many times you come out here and see the brigade of boats just going around and, you're 30 feet behind another boat casting something, similar. It's like, you got to do something a little bit different, think outside the box, and I've done a lot of that out here. Believe me, I've tried everything, and a couple of years ago, the basin for me was, I seen guys just doing the ring around the rosy, and I was pounding the snot out of fish in the middle of like 37 foot of water.
Everybody was in 16 foot throwing in at the secondary
Right.
weed breaks, and we're out there in 36, just any fan cast in any direction. And
And they were just loaded
10,
out there.
15 hot fish a day, you get a shot at 2 or 3. But
Yeah, or better. I mean,
yeah.
Ron, you seen it that one day. How many fish did we move that day out?
20.
Yeah, 24 fish that we moved out in, the middle of the lake. you know, because those fish are getting pressured on the inside from the ring of boats going around it. And we're like, all right. And I've taught a lot of my clients that, you know, and there's a lot of guys now starting to kind of move out. That doesn't necessarily mean they won't be shallow, but if you're not doing anything shallow, why are you going to spend 8 hours shallow and just keep doing nothing? Like, at least check deep. Like, this is the biggest thing I took away from when I'm friends with Spence Petros and I fish with him often. I said, give me one good piece of advice that I could use. And he goes, fish deep, shallow, and in between. And at first I was like, well, that's super generic. Like, I was expecting something super wise, you know? But after thinking about it, it's true. I mean, how many times do you guys come in and are like, I threw a spinnerbait all day and didn't catch a fish?
You
And
were
I'm
in
thinking
3
like,
feet of water all day.
after about 2 hours of throwing that spinnerbait, I would have put that stupid thing down and went and tried something else. Like, you know, maybe they're not biting spinnerbaits today, like, and maybe they're not in 10 foot of water. Maybe
And
they're
guys,
not
this
eating
doesn't
weeds.
have to be like a proven pattern. Like, we got buddies that have been drifting around with like 1 ounce spoons, tinkering around and just getting vertical, doing something
Absolutely.
different. And it's
Absolutely.
producing fish. So
That was another thing, right? Spoons.
tubes, tighten tubes, and just get creative.
Yeah, be creative. You know, fish the whole lake. Don't just say, you know, because muskies don't eat weeds. You know, that's what I always tell guys. Muskies don't eat weeds. They're not sitting in the weeds because they're eating bait. Wherever the bait's at is usually where the muskies are at, is where the walleyes are at, where everything else is at. You know, so any other questions, guys? Is there anything else that?
How about that day you and I were on channel and Poseidon was a prototype?
Yeah, that was pretty cool. Rick from Chaos just gave me. I don't think he even had a name for it.
He
at the
wouldn't even
time.
give me one. He got 2.
You wouldn't let me touch it.
Wouldn't even give me one.
Hell no. I had to beg Mr. Rick to let me keep that one. I was burning that piece of rubber back together. It looked like Frankenstein. It was like a glob of.
I'm
but-
still using the storm kicking minnow out there. Oh man,
Yeah.
it was terrible.
The first day, I think that
Terrible.
was. I had it. He told me try this out, and we went out there and we caught 2 or 3.
30 feet of water, we raced 15.
Yeah, and we caught a couple nice. Yeah.
Everybody's pretty hip to the Poseidon program now, though. I don't know if you noticed. Every boat out here in May has got a white Poseidon 10-inch going out. So
They should.
throw something on them. I was throwing a single 9 Colorado on them this year, and adding like a 1 1/4 ounce weight up off the front of my leader. Roll that thing through the thermocline post spawn and just burn it. And with that big 9 on a barrel swivel, that thing was just churning and grinding, and it was doing well for us. So
Andy's become a very intuitive fisherman. He starts messing with things. He's one of those guys that likes to start, dabbling with stuff, and he definitely locked in a couple really nice patterns doing that. So, what's that?
Sean Jr.
hey.
He's starting to, yeah, Birmingham Jr.
I do have
Yeah.
nail polish in my boat for tweaking my walleye baits based on what the moon's doing.
Yeah, I mean, we
True.
do that kind of stuff,
yeah.
right? I mean, it might be a little nerdy, but
Yeah, he
hey.
rattled canned a super shad wrap out on Lake Geneva one night, flat black. And then it's like, come on, dude, that thing looks like a black turd, and he got some silver glitter on there, 45-incher in the bag an hour later.
Yeah. Like
So
there she
get
is.
creative. They've seen these Fire Tiger ones a few too many times.
Right. Yeah.
Anyhow,
so-
we'll talk forever. You guys have a good rest of your night.
Absolutely.
Thank you for
And
having us.
We do have a couple of shows coming up. We're going to be at the Muskie Show.
St.
over in
Charles
St.
Pheasant
Charles.
Run coming up 18th, 19th,
Schaumburg Show, which is the week after that.
23, 24, 20 something.
We're going to be doing the Rockford Show. I got to actually, you know what? I just got an email. I'll let you guys know. We got
Lincoln's at, Lake County,
Lake County. Yeah, Lincoln's doing that Lake County one. Right.
Saturday and Sunday.
There's a Northern Illinois Lake County Fairgrounds.
Right.
There's a couple of them coming up.
When Lincoln's talking on Saturday and Sunday.
Okay.
So,
Around noon.
We'll probably see a lot of you over the wintertime then, but
yeah. And, I'll probably be doing another episode of the Muskie Hunter this year, too. So, I appreciate everybody's, support through the decade here that I've been doing it. And now, I mean, a lot of you guys know that I went back to full-time as a tradesman. But I'm still guiding. I'm still doing nights and weekends. And Andy's been doing, 300 days a year. This is his full-time gig. And but Lincoln, myself, and Matt are part-time in it right now. So, but I'll still be out here a lot. I'm still doing my part, especially in the summertime. I get to do evenings.
he gets to
and-
come out when the fishing's good,
Yeah, that's right. I kind of pick and choose my times now, and I'm not going to take as many L's. I'm going to get a lot more W's. So, I do appreciate everything that you guys have supported me. It was as a dream to get into this whole thing, and it's certainly I've experienced it at a pretty cool level, and I can tell you that it's not a glamorous lifestyle by any means. Being a fisherman, you're working long hours and putting a lot of time in, and you know, away from the family. And Andy's doing that now and realizing what it takes to actually do this. You know, owning your own business it's a lot, but it's really nice and it's helpful when you start, you know, you come to a place like tonight. I rolled up and I'm like, holy shit, man, there's a lot of people
Hey,
in here.
there's a
Like,
full moon overhead, and I got rods in my boat. Who wants to go to Lake Geneva? Straight from here. I got spots for 2. Real talk. We'll talk in a few minutes. It's moon sets what I want to fish
Right.
when it gets dark.
You still doing, throwing out for salmon out at Stone?
Yeah, we do that. Absolutely. We go
When,
up to,
when the wind's friendly.
yeah, up to Milwaukee, and we do that. That's really good. That's you know, that's one of those, literally one of the best bites for browns in the world.
What time of the year?
Now.
Now through like March, February.
Yeah. March, yeah. I mean, as long as the water's cold, that could be a fantastic bite. When it's on, it's fantastic.
We
Yeah.
ice fish out there for them.
The browns?
These
Oh, it's so
auto
much fun.
fishermen's and jaw jackers.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's so much fun. Yeah, it's a great deal. Yeah, we're always on some kind of bite. I mean, you know, Andy's doing something in the spring here, which I thought was a fantastic thing. I know we're kind of rambling. I'll end it here, but he's doing that Wisconsin River bite in March, which he
Yeah.
goes up there and typically gets
Do
about
like
40,
2-3
50,
weeks up
60.
there. We do like 50 to 100 fish days. They're all 14.5 inches, except 1 out of 10's 15 for the well. I mean, it's a lot of sorting, but it's a lot of fun. Bunch of sturgeon. It's all at the river's edge, so bait, drinks, food, lodging, it's all right there. I'm up there from the 15th to the 31st right now, and I think I got 3 dates left if anybody wants one.
So, yeah, we're here, there, and everywhere. So, you know, thanks to you guys, you've kind of pushed us in a really cool direction, and we've kind of, I like to think of ourselves as the biggest guide service in Illinois, I think, at this point. And, you know, that's because you guys have certainly stuck with us and helped us out, and I've had a lot of good push from people and, you know, motivation from people, because there's a lot of times where I'm like, screw this job, I'm going to do something else. But I'm not giving it up. Just because I started, you know, back in the trade doesn't mean I'm giving this up. This is my baby. So thank you guys very much. I appreciate you guys having us.
Thank you.